Welcome back to Matt's Automotive Channel. And as you probably already know, radios that are a decade old or better are a little lacking in features when compared to today's technology. So I went ahead and ordered up this Dynavin D8. It has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And I'm going to go ahead and install it in my wife's 2010 GT500. So let's get started. All right, now a couple of reasons why I plan on swapping this out with a newer unit is, well, this has seen better days. Obviously, it's worn a bit, but also the technology in it's a little old. And one of the biggest challenges I think I'm going to have with this install is the fact that I have installed two aftermarket cameras in this car. One for the front, so we don't mess up that new chin spoiler, and also a backup camera. But as you can see here, this screen, it's not real brilliant anymore. It also has an old navigation system that's kind of worthless anymore. It's a lot's changed in a decade, and these maps are obviously out of date. So it'll be nice to have the Android Auto, Apple CarPlay working in here. Let's see, I'll go ahead and put her in reverse here. And well, it's kind of hard to tell just looking at the garage door. But anyway, the screen, it's kind of dim and dull and that sort of thing. And then to activate the front camera, it requires me to go over here and hold this phone button down for a few seconds. And then you have to go over here to the screen and then hit yes. And then it goes ahead and brings in the front camera there. So hopefully with this new unit, it'll be a little easier to toggle this on and off. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. And we'll start by removing this center console here. Okay, before we get started with anything, the first thing I'm going to do is disconnect this negative battery terminal. I think it's good practice anytime you're dealing with anything electrical to prevent any kind of shorts. All right. Okay, the first thing we want to do is get the center console out of the way. So go ahead and pull the shifter off. Okay, and then you just release this back part and then lift up on the center console and it should just start popping out. And we'll disconnect the electrical. All right, with the center console out of the way, that reveals these two 7mm bolts here that we need to remove. Once those are out of the way, we can kind of start prying from the bottom here and working our way up. And just use a little pry tool to get the upper ones out. And then we can just remove these connectors. All right, that leaves us with, looks like 6 more bolts. One here, one here, one here, and then the same on the other side. Again, these are 7mm bolts. All right, now that I have them loosened, I went ahead and attached my magnetic 7mm socket. These are really nice when you're working. These are really nice when you're working in tight areas like this where you could potentially drop something and lose it. Just sticks right on, don't have to worry about it. With the bolts out, we should just be able to lift this away. Now this has quite a mess of wires in here. That's because it was previously outfitted with a lockpick system, so we could have a backup camera and that sort of thing, because the original factory units of back in 2010 weren't capable of doing that. So we'll have an extra mess of wires here that we're going to have to clean up. All right, as you can see, I have a great deal of extra wires here to deal with. So I don't think I'm going to concern you with this. Odds are you're not going to have something like this to deal with. So basically what I plan on doing is just removing all the lockpick stuff, and then I'll show you what we're left with, which should be the factory wiring harnesses. All right, finally got the factory radio out down here. Now here's all the lockpick stuff that I need to pull out. Disconnect. All right, lockpick is fully disconnected now. We can just remove that harness completely. All right, with all the lockpick stuff out of the way, everything here is factory with the exception of this guy, which is the backup camera, and this one here, which is the front camera. I'm gonna move one to one side and the other to the other, and then we'll work on the installation of the new unit in here. Next order of business is to remove the glove box so we can access the cable on the sync module right up in there. Now, the instructions say remove the glove box, but you don't really have to remove it. You just need to swing it out of the way. And so basically just release it and then push in the two sides here. And so these little tabs clear the edge here, and then it'll swing down. Now I can show you the cable that we need to access. And it is right up in here. It's just this cable right here, this USB. This is going into the sync module. Okay, now that we have the sync plug under the dash unplugged, there's two other USBs that can be used to plug into it. One here is media, and this one here is the phone. So I believe that we hooked the media into where the sync module was. All right, now that we have the sync module disconnected, we got this connector here. And so what we're gonna do is plug the one in that came with our radio, which is this guy here. One end is a regular USB-C, and the other end here is what we're gonna plug in to the sync module. Okay, now that we have the sync module disconnected, we're left with this cable here. So nothing is gonna be plugged into the sync module anymore, and we'll take this cable that's provided with the radio and plug it in here. All right, now we're plugged into the cable that was plugged into the sync module. So then we'll go ahead and run that through the back here and out over here. I believe we can now put the glove box back. At this point, I still don't know how we're gonna use the front camera, but what I did here is plug everything in that I can. Now we'll haul this over to the car and plug in what we can and see what works and what doesn't. All right. Move the head unit over here. Before I go any further, to prevent any damage to this, I'm going to put a little towel over the shift linkage here and move it back as far as it'll go. All right, well, we have some problems. There's a noise that's constantly coming out of the right front speaker when the battery's hooked up. Car doesn't have to be on, it can just be sitting there and it'll make a buzzing noise. So I thought, well, maybe I can get rid of the buzzing noise by using this harness here, which allows you to continue to use the factory amplifier. And it does it because it has the RCAs that go in here. And so the RCAs are low level and they feed the main amp with the low level. And then the main amp obviously amplifies it and then powers the speakers. Without this piece, then you're powering the speakers directly from this unit itself. I thought that might get rid of the buzz. It did not. So we got to figure out what's going on here. And, you know, with the ignition off, I mean, I wouldn't think any power should be going to the speakers. Even if you have some kind of grounding loop or something, there shouldn't be any noise. So that tells me that the sub in here is being powered all the time. All right, let me demonstrate the noise that I am talking about. So I'm just going to plug the negative battery terminal back in here. And in a few seconds here, you'll start to hear the noise coming out of this out of the speaker. I think as soon as you plug the battery in, the new head unit goes through a little boot up routine, and there it is. I'll be real quiet here so you can hear that. Okay, and now this is the interesting thing. This is the subwoofer here. If I touch that, obviously it makes quite a bit more noise there. So I figured, okay, well, let's go ahead and plug it in here. It'll ground it out and stop the noise completely. I mean, it's supposed to be plugged in here anyway. Wow, okay, that's loud. Okay, there we go. Very little noise, but if you listen real close, you can hear a little bit of hiss there. And this is with the ignition off, mind you. It's not on at all. And so, go ahead and turn the ignition on here. And the system works. It puts out sound here and everything. And this is, by the way, using the bypass harness. So it's using the factory amplifier. There, you can hear quite a bit of noise now. Let's see. Let me get onto the station here. Oh, I don't have the antenna plugged in. Hold on a sec here. Okay, got the antenna plugged in here. Good bass and everything, but as I turn this down, let's see. There, hearing a fair amount of hiss. And I can turn it up, and the sound will eventually overcome that hiss. The only way that it dips down is if I go to dim it completely down, or turn the volume completely down. There. So it stops most of the noise, but again, you can still hear it there. So now my next question is, well, if it's always making noise all the time, even when the car is parked, how much power is it drawing? So anyway, what I'm going to do, I'm not going to put the factory unit back in, but I'm going to disconnect this, and then I'll measure the power draw when the car's in standby mode, or off, in other words, and then I'll plug this in and then measure the amount of current that it draws, and that'll give us an idea of how long this battery is going to last with this unit in here. I did send an email to support, and hopefully they'll get back to me soon. It said that it would take 1 to 2 days in order for them to get back to me, but I basically told them I was interested in exchanging this for another unit, and so we'll see if they come through. All right, so I got the amp meter here hooked up, and so we'll complete the circuit here by touching this. There we go. And I think it's going to draw a little more normally here when the car's first turned on, and then I think after 10-15 minutes it'll go into a standby mode. I might have to wait that long because this seems pretty high amp draw to me, 0.8 amps. And the doors are closed, the lights are off, so we'll see here if it goes into a standby mode here in a bit. I'll hook something up here more permanently. And mind you, this is with the radio not connected. Before we test to see if it goes into a low power mode, let's just check it with the radio plugged in, because we know that when we first turn on, we're drawing about 0.8 amps. And again, the doors are closed, lights are off. So let's go ahead and start it up again here. And, oh man, yeah, that's definitely a lot higher. Holy schmoly. And it just bumped up there when I heard the buzz. You probably can't hear it on this microphone here, but I hear that it is buzzing now. And we went up to about 2.8 amps. And that's with the radio off. That's way, way too high of a draw. If this was a 100 amp hour battery and it was only drawing 2 amps, that'd only last about 50 hours and it'd be completely depleted. And that's assuming using 100% of the battery, which you don't use. So yeah, this is way too high. All right, so let's go ahead and plug this in again. There we go. And we're starting out around 1.5. And then as soon as I hear the buzz, it'll go up to about 2.5. There we are. I hear the buzz now. Okay, so I'm gonna let it sit here maybe 15 minutes or so and see if it ever goes into a standby mode. If not, this is unacceptable, and that's gonna drain my battery pretty quick. All right, I did just temporarily open the door, and well, I'll show you. 2.6, open the door, and the lights come on, and then it's drawing about 3.5 amps at that point. And as soon as the lights go out, it should go back to 2.5. So hopefully after we let this sit for a bit, it should go down even more as the car goes into standby mode. All right, the good news here is I let it sit for about 15 minutes or so, and now the amp draw is way down. It's only 0.023 amps. And as far as the noise in the speaker, let's see if we can hear anything. Nope, it's gone. So the question is, when I open the door, will it start making noise again? Let's see. Yep, there it is. All right, I was chatting back and forth with Dynavin tech support, and they gave me a very helpful hint regarding the hissy noise I was getting from my right front speaker here. Apparently, the connector, there's 3 of them that go to the main harness. This mid-sized one here, the one that has the RCAs that you plug into the subwoofer for the back, are not needed in all applications. And so they recommended that I unplug this, and lo and behold, the noise went away. Sounds great, still have plenty of bass. Everything works great. So, if you run into that problem, just remember, unplug that one connector from the harness. Another thing to point out that wasn't real clear to me, when we unplugged the USB from up here under the glove box from the sync unit, it tells you to plug in the Dynavin adapter to it, but it doesn't say what to do with the other end of it. Well, it turns out that you need to use the cable that says phone, plug that in to the phone side here, and then plug the other end into the cable with the adapter. If you do any other combination, the USB back here is not going to work correctly. I tried various things. I used the media one and plugged it in over here where it belongs, and it would intermittently work. I'd plug the phone in and it would connect, disconnect, connect, disconnect, that sort of thing. And also be sure that you don't plug the adapter cable directly in here. It fits very loosely. Use the one that says phone and then take that cable and plug it into the adapter cable that was pulled out of the sync. Then it will work perfectly. Also, for my application, I did not need the retainer harness for the stock OEM amplifier. So I removed that, and works just fine. Now the only thing left to do is to plug in this retainer harness here for the aux port that goes back here. So this is basically just going to plug into the aux RCAs in the back. Then I'm going to run that cable underneath here, and then over to the port that you plug in once I have the console back in. Another thing to note, you'll see on these aux ports, you have a left and right. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see it here. But anyway, there's one for video, and then there's the 2 that I'm going to use for the aux port that goes into the center console. Well, I have a front camera on this car as well as a back camera. So what I did was I plugged in the camera into the aux port, and then when I want to view the front camera, I can just go to the aux input on the screen, and I'll show that to you once I have everything back together. But anyway, it works great, and that's one way to get around the fact that it's not really set up for 2 cameras. Okay, I went ahead and hooked in the aux retainer harness into the back here, and then I'll just run that underneath and back out here. Now, another thing to note, you're going to have to transfer these little plastic tabs from the old bezel over to the new one in order for it to snap in correctly. I just pulled the tabs off the old unit. Now we'll go ahead and put them on the new one. All right, now we can start putting the components back. Put the little tabs on the back and pop that in, pop the display back in. All right, as for the microphone, I just used the adhesive mount here and then ran it along the edge here, down this A-pillar, and then over the glove box, and then into the side here and plugged it into the back of the unit. All right, console is in, and some cars have heated seats, so they have 2 different sets of buttons. Some are for the heated seats. I'll have a little heated seat emblem on there, and then we got the blank one since we don't have the heated seats. And I believe those just push in like so. All right, we're done with the install. All right, so the way I have it hooked up now is the front camera is hooked to the aux jack. So if I want to look at the front camera, I just go from Bluetooth, select aux, and there's the front camera. And then of course the backup camera still works. You can override it by putting it in reverse. I think the ignition has to be on. And there we go. I'm gonna have to cut the cable responsible for the additional lines on here. There's ones being generated by the Dynavin itself and the others by the camera. There's this little loop that you can cut on the camera that will prevent those lines from showing up. Okay, well, all in all, everything ended up okay. There's a few rough patches there. And I think I last left you with the impression that I did not use the retaining harness for the factory amp. I ended up putting that back in. Reason being was the volume was not consistent. I would get it all set up, sounded great, turn the car off, come back later, and then the volume was too sensitive. I mean, you click it up one notch on the volume from low and it would be way too loud. And I could get it to go back, but I would have to reset the radio and then everything would work until I shut it off and turn it on next time. So anyway, the solution to that was to put in the retaining harness for the factory amp, and that took care of it. Works perfect, flawlessly every time. So anyway, I think I'll call it quits there. On the next video, we'll be installing the hood release latch on the 2001 Mustang. So anyway, I'll catch you then. Bye-bye.